It's Saturday, and on Saturday we like to talk about bigger time frames, looking at monthly, weekly, and daily charts, mainly focusing on the SPY here, but we will be looking at other things as well. On Sunday, we will be going into those shorter time frames, but I think it's important for us to look at these bigger time frames to show early on in the month we are seeing this weakness. And are people justified to think that this could be something really bad, like say a stock market crash? And I think that is justified, but also in this video, we're going to talk about the other side of things and how those people could be completely taken off guard. And then once we tie together on Sunday the shorter time frames, we might be talking about upside throughout the next week. So let's get into it. Let's get started and talk about how this market, even though it looks like it might be tipping off a cliff, could end up in that upward direction. And we see this very simply from the monthly chart, right? I don't want to draw a bunch of lines on this because they're all going to pop up in a second, but we can see this from the SPY on the monthly, how the monthly does have no divergence on the MACD, but it has triple divergence on the RSI, and that is confirming with this bar as of right now, but it's early on in the month, right? It is early on in the month, and this indicator does curl down many times, and sometimes you just need to make sure that the lagging indicator of the MACD is actually following it, but the most important thing is the price action. You notice the price action as of right now, if it closed like that, that would be a pretty bearish close, and we might be reverting back down to some kind of retest of 527.50, right? We can see all these things. But we need to take into consideration if this is going to end up continuing, right? This channel, we do like to trade like water. That means we pay attention to both sides. So something I want to be aware of is the fact that, one, the SPY does not have the signal at the same time. We do notice that that is curling down, but that could end up back in the upward direction. But people are right to assume like, hey, we are on the edge of something bad. And that could be very, very close down the line. Now, I know there's a bunch of lines that popped up on the chart. Try to stick with me here because those lines are going to be important in a moment, but people are justified to see weakness here, right? They are justified to be like really fearful in this moment. I'm not saying they are not, but if everyone is fearful, sometimes you end up catching a bounce. But these things are something to be worried about, right? Triple divergence on the weekly does like to curl down monthly charts, but we have noticed that this market has been irrational for, man, if you want to say years and years and years, I would be right there with you, but you understand the game that you're playing, right? We understand that this market has been irrational for a very, very long time. So to assume that it will not be irrational for longer than you can remain solvent is just a silly thing, in my opinion, because it's happened countless times throughout history here where everyone thinks there is a stock market crash, but the stock market ends up turning up and seeing something a little irrational. And we notice that this weekly is still in positive territory. So if the weekly turns up, we might have bought ourselves a few weeks in here. We might need to be paying attention to the future. But as of right now, that is facing in the downward direction, which means as of right now, we do see, even in a bullish context, in a bullish trend, we do notice that the bears are a little bit in control here, and we can see that from our monthly expected move. I mean, it's the first week of the month, and the bears were in such good control that they had the entire move in 1 week, and that is a big deal, and we need to be paying attention to those shorter time frames on Sunday, so make sure you are subscribed because there are some important things. And now we're going to talk about, yes, it is justified to be bearish here, but just how bearish are people getting? Are they getting to the point where if something bullish happened, would they be taken off guard and maybe even cause some kind of squeeze? And at this point, you're probably wondering what all these lines are. What are the yellow lines across my screen going to the downside, right? What is the red line going across my screen to the downside? And I want you guys to look at this. And what I did was I just pulled up the put call volume, right? Or I pulled up put volume, and then I just looked back and I go, okay, these moments where we've actually tagged, and I should put another one right here, honestly, bam, and that thing should be in red. But what's going on here is you notice that when we do get these upward readings on the put volume, we are actually approaching, usually very quickly, some kind of bottom, right? Within the next few, I would say over here, it took another week or so. We got one more complex correction, but that was the bottom of the overall 2022 bear market. So that is something I want to be paying attention to. This could last for a little bit of time. We could see more volatility. Okay. But most of these red ones, they just see this, they bottom out in the next couple of days. We see this, we bottom out the next day after a gap down. We see this right here. Now this is where it changes, and you notice that these readings that are marked off in red actually cross through that white line, and the ones that didn't reached up towards it. Now, when you do reach up towards it, you can get those small bottoms. So we did see those quick retests of the 20, quick move down right here, and we did see these little readings, and we caught these pops when it happened, but you notice at the actual low, you got one more time where it reached up towards it, and you actually saw a divergence there between this. So very, very interesting for this to end up in the upward direction. But what do we have right now? We have multiple touches above this, and we are starting to see the same thing that happened over here, which is it is starting to come down. Very, very interesting for this to start coming down. This means that we have actually remained in a high put volume here for actually longer than I expected. I really did not see this in the CPC data, but when you just pull up put volume, you might want to be paying attention to that, because that says ever since February 21st, we have been seeing major levels of put volume hit, and that is displayed to you by that white line. And you notice that in the past, we've only touched it, right? This is zooming out all the way to, you know, January of 2022. So say 3 years. We've only actually exceeded that 1, 2, 3 times. And now we've exceeded it 1, 2 times within a matter of a couple of weeks. So this is going to be very important to watch here, because this is the type of thing you can see at potential bottoms that could actually rip to the upside. So we will be paying close attention to this. And this is why subscribing right now to get tomorrow's info, to get that shorter time frame behavior, to get these weekly expected moves, will really help you out. And just to end this little portion here, right, we're talking about how there could be a bounce here. Your monthly expected move is suggesting the same thing, right? When you do revert down to these, you are attracted to these levels. We have the 200 at that level, some support there, but we also have our monthly expected move, which means for the entire month of March, all that was priced in was this, and that happened in the first week. When that does happen, you normally do see reactions up. Even if you are going to get that crash moment afterwards, you will still, most of the time, get a reaction up and then fail that next move. And that is something that we will be paying attention to. But I wanted to show you this because this is an easy display of, hey, a lot of people are bearish. But if we get news that potentially is bad, but it's priced in already, and we don't get more bad news or something really, really bad to shake people out past these levels, I don't think we have to be worried about a stock market crash. I think you need to be worried about a stock market squeeze to the upside. So if we need to be worried about some kind of squeeze to the upside, yes, we know that this can keep dropping. We will talk about more about those failures and how you can see how this thing is failing, making some kind of small bounce that is going to tear us back down. We're going to talk about that in tomorrow's video, so make sure you're with us tomorrow. But we've been talking a lot about this right shoulder that could have been, and I think in these areas, we might want to be aware of something here, and that might be the fact that some things are telling us we need to be very aware of lower highs. And how do we overall find that? Well, we want to look for the stocks that have weekly divergence that suggest a monthly chart can curl down. And the good part is the SPY and the Qs both have these signals. And we see it very, very clearly how it was not that significant here. We go through something bad very quickly, but we end up in the upward direction, and then we see it get significant. So now is a time where we really want to be paying attention. We even got that next lip up that wasn't able to confirm, and we saw that daily divergence, triple divergence come in here. So this is a very big sell. Like, do not think that this isn't something to be worried about, but we're just stating how we are seeing potential reversal signals on those shorter time frames, and people are very, very bearish. If you don't believe me that people are very bearish, here was the survey for this week, and we notice only 19.3% were actually bullish. We do see neutral slightly increasing, which is a good thing. If you start to see reversal here, those people who are neutral are almost like us, right? We're kind of the neutral people sitting here going, hey, we're waiting to see if that confirmation happens on the shorter time frame, and then we're willing to potentially bet behind this market, right? That's how I like to think about things. I like to go, okay, I like to mainly put myself in a neutral stance a lot of the time, and then as we start to make those reversal signals, I start to stay on this side of neutral, and then we start to slowly come over to the bull side. So as of right now, you have 57.1%, and that was previously 60.6%. So you've had 2 solid weeks of bearishness bullishness, and you see that big shift from the 19th of February where we were only at 40.5% or 47.3%. Now you're at 60.6%. Now you're at 57.1%. So that means that people are very, very bearish at a time where we're actually seeing reversal signals on shorter time frames. And talking about the weekly divergence, what was the main thing we were looking at here? What do we need to be aware of? Well, the daily scale could turn up if this thing is able to confirm those signals and turn to the upside. We can see a reaction up here. But what we want to be aware of is the positioning of the MACD. The positioning of the MACD is suggesting that we could make some kind of lower high. Now, this could look something like here in the past where we saw that bigger move down, and then you see that reaction up, and then watch out if we're actually confirming back to the downside and not seeing this, see that curvature, right? We want to see this continue. We want to be open to a cup and handle with the highs here if we end up in the upward direction, but we also need to seriously be watching this and make sure that we understand the MACD positioning here is pretty low. So if we only get a reaction like this, and then we see this curl up and we curl back down into negative territory, we actually need to be aware of a lower high. And that's simply because we've been talking about the right shoulder that really could have been, and it could be a pretty complex one, right? We know that this market has been very confusing, but we also know that this could be something that rips around a lot of the time because of that. So we could see upward motion, we could see downward, and this is where we kind of pay attention to this like a bear market and treat it like bear market volatility. And we've even seen people like Tom Lee say the same things that we've been saying for the past couple of months ever since we started to see this sideways behavior. He's starting to say this is behaving like a bear market right now, and people are placing bets like a bear market, and we could see a big rally for the next couple of months. That is what Tom Lee has been saying, and even suggested making a bottom last week. And that, tied together with the signals proving it, it's kind of hard to disagree with him at this point. You have a monthly expected move that is suggesting a bounce from here is very, very likely. But we're going to be aware of lower highs. Big stocks like Apple with potential A, B, C type moves would be a problem. And remember, the positioning of the MACD, even with the higher low, states that a lower high is very possible. So could this be a quick run that fails very quickly? That is something we will pay attention to on this channel, right? The signals will overall tell us, even if it's just a daily chart telling us, hey, Apple is confirming down after making some kind of double top. So we will be paying attention to it. This looks to me like it could be that downward pressure. And the weekly chart is something I will watch here if we're going to head back to all-time highs, right? If the weekly is able to confirm on this MACD, confirm on this RSI, and it's already trying to hold above the 9-week moving average on the weekly scale here in positive territory. If we can see that extension, we could see a few weeks and then watch out for potential earnings coming down the street, right? So we want to be paying attention to these things, but the main thing here for Apple is just, and what we're going over is a lower high is still very possible for something like Apple. Tesla, what is that one leaning towards? Tesla is overall leaning towards a lower high. So this will have to build better, right? We will have to see the buying pressure continue in order to head in that upward direction, or else you are vulnerable to just seeing some kind of curl up and then seeing that curl back down into negative territory. These are things that we need to be aware of in this environment. As we could see some kind of rip here, we want to be sure, especially if there's gaps left behind, that we want to be sure to not be too bullish, even if we are correct. We want to be bullish for as long as it makes sense. That is where weekly and monthly expected moves really help us with our trade. Amazon. Now, Amazon's an important one because it has the divergence, and I think this thing could see a big snapback. I think this could be a big snapback because as of right now, Amazon on the weekly scale, it does have the divergence on the MACD, not the RSI at the same time. We'll see if that's able to turn back around. But right now, I think you seriously have to be aware of a lower high for Amazon. Amazon has some of the best reversal signals right here, so a big move would make a lot of sense. But if we come up to even 233 and start to see that resistance come in, I'm not going to be too excited for it unless it can hold itself up better. We'll pay attention to those shorter time frames. We just want to be aware of big rips that lead to big sells because we might be making that right shoulder that could have been. So we will be paying attention to this for Amazon. Amazon is very likely to get a lower high. Once again, even to go get that right shoulder, like that right shoulder that could have been, not necessarily a head and shoulders, but that right shoulder that could have been, you still have to get through 213.52 and this little zone right above it. So there will be some big resistance above us. I assume if we get that bullishness, we would want to gap above that for Amazon to actually get to a price point of about 233. And that's where we just have to be a little bit cautious. It doesn't mean it has to be bearish. It means we want to be cautious here in case there's a big drop. But if that thing does hold up above 213.52, I'd be pretty happy with it for the time being. So I'm aware that it can end up in both directions, but right now your MACD is suggesting, hey, watch out for a lower high. For NVIDIA, you actually have something a little bit different. You actually have flat divergence on your MACD, you have divergence on your RSI, so NVIDIA is a very big stock, and this signal is suggesting that you can see a weekly turn up here. So if the weekly does turn up here, it is very likely that we could see that positivity take us through this little trend between the highs, and we could actually take out the high and go make a new one. So that's going to be a big deal, but you notice a lot of these things, you're seeing daily divergence on NVIDIA that says I can go that way, while everyone is super bearish, and this is going to be a big problem for bears down the line if we start to see positivity here, because if they think they're wrong here, then they are really likely to be wrong up here. If we do see that curl back down on the weekly, create that divergence point really quickly, that can be a big problem for NVIDIA, but an even bigger problem for people who are kind of flipping back and forth at the exact wrong times, right? We look for the reversal signals at lower levels to give us hints. Most people just see, hey, the direction is down. Let me buy shorts right when I'm not supposed to, and that's something we talk about is the decision making in the market. So something here that is interesting is Meta. Now Meta has not confirmed fully down. I guess it says it has actually. So Meta has confirmed down on this weekly chart, so that's suggesting that weekly divergence is there. So what do we need to be aware of here? Need to be aware of a lower high for the daily chart, unfortunately. Now, I'm not leaning towards that myself, but the weekly chart is suggesting that I need to be aware if this just sees a lackluster move and gives it up. But for now, the daily is contradicting that and suggesting, hey, we do not have any form of weakness up here for momentum. So if this catches a buy, this was just a test of the breakout area, which is something that we marked off with these white lines around that 617.82. Very nice. And we even went all the way down to 598.41. We almost made it there. So if this curls up, this is just a simple swing trade above the 200. This suggests that we do have a lot of probabilities on the daily scale, even though the weekly is saying lower high, watch out. The daily scale is suggesting I could go all the way back up to something like 750 or even a little bit higher before this thing is able to tear down. So we will be paying attention to that as well. But you're noticing another stock that is suggesting, hey, am I really that bearish, or am I trying to hold up? And Meta has some pretty good reversal signals we're going to talk about tomorrow. Microsoft, this one is really leaning towards a lower high. This could see a big reaction to 418. If you don't hold up in 418, that's going to be a problem. If you curl down this MACD near the center line, we have to treat it with caution. But if you're able to hold up better and curl up to the upside around that level here of about 417 to 418, you would see that nice little head and shoulders form for you. So we will be paying attention to that for Microsoft. But is that enough just to get you into a sell zone and then we end up turning that thing back down? So we will be watching that as well. Another stock that is really deep that suggests, hey, watch out for a lower high. We have another stock in Google. So you're starting to see a trend here where a lot of these things can make upward moves, but they're at key levels. If they're at those key levels, well, if that's just some kind of 2-week bounce and then we actually curl back down, that could be a big issue because we might be curling down in negative territory. We might be setting up a lot of structure that actually suggests we can head lower. And this upward move might be sporadic, might be a good one, but if it's not sporadic enough and it doesn't break through some key levels, and then the next turn down has divergence behind it, you might walk right into, out of a bear trap, into a bull trap right away. So we need to be very cautious. And now we've shown up off a lot of stocks that show, yeah, we can see upside moves, but we still have to be aware if those upside moves are good and then end up failing once people get bullish. So I know it's a different kind of video, but once we actually tie in the shorter time frames, I think you will be very open to how this thing could head up and how this thing could fail, right? We will talk about both of those things, even on the shorter time frames. If we need to make an even more complex base here, we will be talking about those this week, and we will be updating these purple lines to get you guys those weekly expected moves, which now will take you most likely outside of the monthly expected move, which normally if you do see a move outside of the monthly, monthly early on in the month, and you do see that happen even going on into 2 weeks, you can see that weekly expected move tag. So we should still be open to it. Even if we get this big reaction here, we could head to lower levels first before we're able to see that turn to the upside. Remember that this monthly expected move is suggesting that we are going to close the month within these yellow lines, and we have a 32% chance to not do that. So we'll tie everything together. We notice that because of all the sentiment out there, people are very, very bearish, and we do have those shorter time frames to talk about tomorrow to show you guys how they could be completely wrong. And that's something we want to be aware of, because we do not want to be in the crowd that's completely wrong. And it seems like retail tries to be there a lot of the time. So we're just trying to help out by showing some of this data off and suggesting that if an upward move does come and you start to see confirmations, we could end up going very bullish before this thing gets more bearish for the time being. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Really do appreciate it. Give a thumbs up if you thought it was helpful. Thank you so much for spending some of your Saturday here with me. Really appreciate you being a part of this community, liking, subscribing, doing all the things. If you need those monthly or weekly expected moves for tomorrow, for all the stocks that we cover, you can join Patreon right now. Thank you guys. I hope you have a great weekend. All right. Peace out.